Okay, so just before we move on to step 15, which is the first of the spreadsheet tasks, I'm just going to read through my evaluation of the two images, which we finished the last task with. I've said that the first background image is too small to identify what it is supposed to be, but the colour and the tiling of the image are neutral and unobtrusive, meaning that the content can be easily read over the top. The second image, however, is more easily identifiable as an elephant because the tiles are larger due to the aspect ratio of the image, but this actually makes the content of the table more difficult to read. I recommend the image 1 as more appropriate as a background. So again, this was image 1 back here. Very small, you can't actually see what they're supposed to be, those little tiles. And image 2, this larger image of the elephant. But as a result of that, the recommendation for me would be image 1 because it's more easy to read the content. Okay, so I'm going to save my evidence file and minimize it. And I've saved my website as well and my CSS, and I've just closed those down for the moment. I'm not going to delete anything just in case I need to reprint any evidence. I'm going to leave it where it is for now. But I'm going to move straight on with task 3, the spreadsheet task. The instruction says you are going to prepare a spreadsheet model to calculate the weekly wages of the employees. You must use the most efficient methods for your spreadsheet. All currency values are in Indian rupees to 2 decimal places. Employees are paid to work 50 hours in each year and get 2 weeks of unpaid holiday. Some employees are paid weekly and others are paid a monthly salary. Open and examine the files m17 wages.csv, which is there, and m17 data.csv. So we're going to open both of those files and then we're going to do some editing. Now, sometimes if you double click on one of these files, it will open perfectly nicely in an Excel format, but that's not always the case because it's not an Excel file, it's a comma separated values, a CSV file. So you need to be prepared to open it the old-fashioned way. So go to Excel first, start with a blank workbook, go to data, from text, choose the file. So on my desktop, oh, wrong one for me. This one, I think. There it is. So the wages file I'll open first. It's a delimited file, okay? I need to tick the box that says it's separated by commas because it is separated by commas. You don't need to deselect tab, just leave it, okay? But make sure you're selecting that it's delimited by commas. That's important. Next, and finish. Now, wherever your cell was highlighted is where your text will appear. If you want it to be up in cell A1, you need to make sure that that's where your cell is highlighted when you insert your data. Otherwise, my data would have started here in cell H6. But I can click up in cell A1 and press OK, and there is my first spreadsheet. So I can file and save that onto my workbook, and I'm just going to make sure that that's saved as an Excel workbook for now. Okay, minimize that down. And I'm going to, I'll open a new one for the second file because my instructions asked me to bring in 2. So I'm going to go to File and New, blank workbook again, Data, okay, from text, and this one was the M17 data file. Delimited, next, separated by a comma, next, and finish. So those are my 2 files, the wages file and the data file. Now I can see that the data file contains numbers which are going to be formatted as currency because they're salaries. The other file does not, so I don't need to do any editing there for now, but I'm just going to edit in here and save this particular workbook. So file and save as, put this in my current folder and save it as book 2 for now. Okay, I'm going to highlight the annual salary, and the instruction at the top told me that all currency values are in Indian rupees and to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to right click, format cells. This format cell type will be currency, and it's set to 2 decimal places, and I need to go and find the Indian rupee. Now this is a pain. Yes, you have to go through them, okay? Some different softwares have quicker search methods for the different systems, but unfortunately this current version of Excel does not, so you just have to click through them. So just looking as you go, it's called English Indian, and it has in little brackets the Indian. The symbol looks like an R with 2 lines through it, like the euro. It looks like an E with 2 lines through it for the rupee. There we go. So I've got English India and I've got the Bangalore, okay? And it looks like a little R with 2 lines through it. So I'm going to choose that one and press OK. There we go, all formatted to rupees. And control and save that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working in my wages spreadsheet. So I've just minimized my data spreadsheet and I've got my wages spreadsheet open. And if I refer to my instruction booklet, I have a little screenshot in here now of what the wages spreadsheet should look like. So I'm going to insert 2 new rows and format it to look like this. Now there's 10 marks available for this to make sure that they've been imported correctly and formatted, so I don't want to miss anything. I need to make sure that my row heights and my columns are all correct, that the type of font is correct, etc. So the first thing I need to do is to insert 2 new rows. So I'm going to click on the row header for row 1, right click, insert, there's my first new row, and again, right click and insert. And then I'm going to make my header bar by highlighting cells A1, B1, C1, D1, E1, F1 and G1, and I'm going to merge them. That's on the Home tab, merge cells. And I'm going to add the heading Goa Elephant Sanctuary. Okay, so I have the Goa Elephant Sanctuary, which is merged, and that should have a grey shading. And the text should be bold, and it should be larger than the other text, as I can see from my instruction booklet here. And this may actually be even a different font, but it is important to notice that it's a sans serif font. So I can leave the font as it is, or I can pick a more appropriate sans serif font. So I might pick Arial Black, for example, which I'm pretty happy with. And then row 2, again, I notice on my instructions that row 2 is a lower height, it's thinner than the other rows, so I'm going to drag that up to make that slightly smaller by clicking on the row header for row 2, which is the one underneath, and just dragging it slightly smaller. And then row 3, I notice, has a black fill colour and white text. I also noticed that row 3 has a serif font. So I'm going to change the type of font to a serif font. Bell MT will do. Okay, or I can choose one, if I wish, that looks a little bit more like the one on the actual spreadsheet, which I would say is probably Times New Roman. It also does appear to be a bold serif font, so I can add that feature as well. Okay, and the last thing that I would notice, just resizing my columns here, is that I can see more clearly the grid lines in between the various cells, which suggests to me that grid lines have been turned on. So I'm going to highlight all of my text here, my selected cells, these ones, and I'm going to go to the little window for borders and I'm going to add all borders. There we go. Okay, so I'm now pretty happy with that looking like this. Okay, and it asks me to now save the spreadsheet and take a screenshot showing cells A1 to G5 and place that into the evidence document. So I'm just going to save this as M17 and my candidate number. Save, and I'm going to take a screenshot. And it does say that I only actually need a screenshot of the that top block of cells from A1 to G5. So I'm actually going to crop my screenshot to G5 here. So by clicking on the screenshot, I can choose the crop option, which is just over here, and I can minimize this down. Okay, I'm going to put that, I'll just put the heading for evidence 7 back with the image itself. Make the image a little bit bigger. There we go, I'm happy with that. So that's representing my version of the picture in the instruction booklet. Okay, so moving on. We're now asked to place name, centre number and candidate number on the left in the footer and an automated file name including the path on the right in the footer. So I'm going to go to Insert and Header and Footer. I'm going to jump down to the footer, and on the left I'm going to put my name, my candidate number, and my centre number, and on the right I'm going to put the automated file name and path. Okay. And now to close this, I click out of the footer first, okay, and then I go to View and Normal, and I'm back in my normal view. Okay, my next instruction says, in cell D4 here, enter a function to look up the pay type from the contents of the file M17 data, which is here. So I want to find the pay type, whether they are weekly or salaried, okay, from this file. So I'm going to do a VLOOKUP. When I do a VLOOKUP, it's easier to resize the two spreadsheets so that you can have them next to one another. Okay, so I'm just going to resize my two windows so I can have them directly next to one another, like so. Okay, so I'm going to bring back the pay type, weekly or salaried, wages or salaried, okay, based upon their job code, because that's the common code that we have here, the job code. So in pay type, I'm going to start with an equals VLOOKUP. And what I'm going to look up is I'm going to look up the job code, which is stored in cell E4. So that's my lookup value. And I'm going to look that value up in the table array, which is over here. So I'm simply going to click in this cell and select my table array. So there's my table array, comma. The next part is my column index number. So from which column am I returning data? Well, I want to bring back the data from column 2, which is just here. Oops, there we go. Okay, and lastly, I need to enter whether it is a range lookup or not. So a range lookup meaning that I'm looking for within a range of data, and a false lookup meaning that it's an exact match. And this is an exact match because the code here will match exactly the code here. So I'm going to type in the word false. I'm going to close brackets. I'm going to press enter. And it tells me that job code CR is a weekly pay type, which I can see is true. And then I'm going to drag that down. There we go. So most of them are weekly salaries, weekly wages, except for 3, which are salaried, which is the MD, the VS, and the IM. And I can check that as correct. MD is an S, IM is an S, and VS is an S. All of the others are wages, not salaries. Okay, so we will continue with the next function in the next video.